in the chat, and we are going to get started. So, hi everyone. I'm Molly Heffernan, Director of Marketing for the Tory Burch Foundation, and welcome to our Small Business Webinar Series. Today's session, Business Without Burnout. It's especially timely. We are in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month and emerging from one of the most challenging times for small business owners. So we have a very incredible speaker with us today. Latham Thomas is a wellness expert, the founder of Mama Glow, a global maternal health and education brand. She was named one of Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul 100, serves on the Tufts University Nutrition Council, is a member of Well and Goods Council, where she provides expertise in women's wellness, pregnancy, self-care. And we are just beyond thrilled to have Latham here with us to teach self-care strategies for founders and their teams. And wanted to give you all just a little heads up. I know that for those who have tuned into our sessions every few weeks, you're used to a lot of slides and note-taking. Today is a little different. Latham is going to mix some tips and advice with guided exercise and give us really an example of how to take the self-care practice into our lives every day. So if you have questions during the session, please drop them in the Q&A box. We're going to try and answer as many as we can. And then share the kudos and the good vibes over in the chat box. We want to hear from you, keep this really interactive. But enough of me, over to Latham to take us through today's session.
Thank you so much, Molly. It's so great to be here. Welcome everyone and everyone who's just joining us as you keep pouring in. It's incredible to just be here with you all today. I can't see you, but I feel your energy. And like Molly mentioned, we spend so much time on our computers, so much time in Zoom, so much time in presentations and note-taking, that I thought we could have this space a little differently today, and sort of provide ourselves with some respite. I want to, instead of show you slides about the things I would like you to integrate into your lives, I thought we could practice some of those things together today. And in addition to that, we'll be sending you resources that you all can take in and bring into your communities, into the workplace, and if you're a solopreneur, into your own personal businesses. And so what I'd like to start with, we will have a pen and paper because there will be some reflections, okay? So have your pen and paper on hand for that. And then what I want you to do now is make some space for yourself. If you're sitting upright, make sure that you're sitting nice and tall. If you're lying back in your bed, I don't know where you all are, but I want you to get comfortable for the next couple of minutes, because we're just going to connect, ground ourselves, and breathe together, okay? And if this is the first time that you've taken a moment for reflection today, then that's fantastic. It's going to require that you all, for the most part, take an opportunity to rest a little bit, okay? So don't do anything, don't be in the chat, but just be in relaxation, okay? So find a place that's comfortable to sit or lie back. And when you do that, I'm sitting upright because I'm here with you, right? And I'm gonna sit up and be in this meditation with you. And I'm just gonna use some sound to guide us as well. And I have what's called a Shruti box, which I'll show you. Looks like this. It comes from India, and it's a really beautiful instrument that I use in meditation. Someone said they just got back from meditation. Absolutely. This is fantastic and so super important for us as business owners, for us as founders and people who are leading charge of our communities. It's important for us to ground ourselves as we step into the day. So let's do that together. Just receive a deep breath in through your nose. And why don't you exhale, just sigh it all out audibly. Good. A deep breath in. And on your exhale, just sigh it all out. Nice. Again, inhaling. And exhale, sigh it all out. Good. And just allow yourself to keep breathing at a pace that feels comfortable for you. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, but just be at ease. And so while you're here breathing, I want to invite you to place your right hand over your heart, your left hand over your belly, and just continue to feel the connection with your breath. Receiving a breath in through the nose and exhale to release. Receiving a deep breath in and exhale. Inhaling and exhale. So while you're breathing, I hope what you're noticing as you're connected with your body, the ever so slight movement as you breathe on the inhalation and exhalation. What's happening when we breathe is that we allow the parasympathetic nervous system, which governs the stress response, to be at ease. And so we have the opportunity to recalibrate our nervous systems for calm, to start our day with ease. Just for the next couple of moments, I want you to embrace the energy of ease. Inhale and exhale. And so I want you to take a moment here to set an intention for today. I want to invite that you be open in mind and in spirit and receptive to the information, the practices, the guidance, and the community that's here. And I want you to promise to yourself that you will embrace the energy of ease. Today, we are focused on building our businesses without burnout. And so part of that means designing spaces of ease, of reflection, of restfulness. Receiving a breath and exhale. Receiving a breath and exhale. Receiving a breath and exhale. And in this next moment, I want you to allow to come to the surface a word, a reflection, your intention or dedication, whatever you would like to share. And when we emerge from this moment, I want you to enter that into the chat. Gently just bow your head in a moment of reverence to yourselves, saluting yourselves, each other, and opening this time that we're spending here together. Receive a breath and exhale. Receive a breath and exhale. receiving a breath, and exhale. Now I want to invite that you reach your arms up and overhead, extend them nice and long so you can stretch, right? Maybe roll your shoulders back if that feels good to you. Yeah, and then when you feel ready, you can gently open up your eyes. All right, beautiful. And as you come back in, just go ahead and drop in the chat whatever came up for you. If you have an intention for today, if you have a reflection that you want to share, anything that comes up for you that you want to offer up in the chat in terms of words, that would be beautiful. Um, Candace says honor and stay in the flow, empower. Beautiful. Yeah. So welcome everyone. Um, Balance, self-love, inspiration, focus on what is vital, self-care, letting go. My intention is to build up myself and those around me, self-love, stay present, patience and determination, consistency, peaceful, remain, self-care, self-love, and letting go, letting myself laugh and play. We're going to talk about play today. Beautiful. Giving myself and others some grace, determination, purpose, finding focus, staying peaceful and calm in the chaos. Beautiful. Thank you all so much for the shares. Keep them coming. Please read and see what your fellow attendees are sharing in the community here. It's so incredible to be in a space where you can be with others who are experiencing similar things, right? Having similar growing pains, going through similar challenges. And today we're going to talk about one of the things that is really challenging for all of us, right? Um, Balancing our businesses, right? Building business without burnout. Okay. How many people in the past year, and I know a lot of you have come here because of COVID-19 and the pandemic and being, relegated to your homes and to computers and being in this online world. But how many of you in the past year have felt a sense of burnout, have felt a sense of overwhelm, have felt a sense of anxiety? Anybody? Yup. In the chat, exactly. Yes, you feel this, right? And guess what? You're not alone. So many people in our community, everyone is saying that they feel this. So many of our community are really suffering, have been living through the past year and change, isolated, right? Not with community. And also, by the way, growing businesses, okay, and functioning as if we weren't in a global pandemic. And so I want to first just start by bringing up and offering in this moment that each of you is surviving a pandemic. And so all of the things that you have been doing to cope, to support yourselves, to make it through, have been ways that your body has shown up to support you through this moment. And so please give yourself everything that you guys are saying inside of this chat. Give grace, peace, love, tenderness, right? Self-care. Feed yourself that first, because you all are literally surviving a pandemic. And so we have to, as folks who are driven, who are committed, who are highly functional, right? We have to also give ourselves that grace. And we have to give ourselves that ease to be able to make space for what's to come as we emerge outside of this pandemic. So on the other side of this, how are we going to design our businesses for more flow? How are we going to support our teams? And if we're solo, how are we going to move in a way that really speaks to our greatest needs in business and our personal needs, right? And so I know a lot of you have experienced tremendous growth in this time, and others of us have, endured a lot of challenge and struggle. For me, in my business, we were thrust the second week of March into an online format for a business that was all in person, all high touch in person trainings as well as services. We had to pivot in less than 15 days our entire business into an online model. How many other people feel that, right? And one of the things I feel grateful for the pandemic is that it allowed us the opportunity to test our agility. And because I had the practices that I'm going to share with you today, I was able to move through with ease and with grace, and I was able to utilize what was happening as an opportunity, right? And so I want us to be able to have the skill sets and support so that we can really transform the things that show up as challenges into opportunity, and that we can learn to be flexible and pliant, not only in our consciousness, right, and in our businesses. Okay, so let's talk about while we're here. You know, this past year has impacted all of us in so many um, incredible ways, right? Many businesses have pivoted, many have fallen and collapsed. But a lot of us have formed new businesses as a result of the pandemic, new business lines, and even some of you who are leaders at your companies, some of you who are founders, others who are solopreneurs, can really benefit from ways to design for the future that will provide more sustainability for you personally, as well as your community and the culture that you're cultivating within your business community. And so I want to start by really framing what burnout is, because I know that's in the title. And I know that many of us are probably feeling that from time to time. Burnout is an actual legitimate medical diagnosis. Okay, according to the World Health Organization's handbook on the International Classification of Diseases that guides medical providers and practitioners in diagnosing disease. Okay, so the fact that this is now something that is in our popular culture, it's in the zeitgeist now, is because of the way that we've been designing our business lives and what we've been prioritizing as rugged individualism, really centering capitalism as paramount, but at the expense of community, at the expense of what it means for those who work with us, right? So, how do we design in a way that's sustainable and that doesn't lead us to a place of burnout, right? Because burnout and sort of addressing it in a singular fashion will not solve the core issue, which is the actual design of our business flow, and how we're going to engage with our consumers and how we're going to engage with our staff and larger community. So let's talk about what exactly burnout is. It's characterized by emotional exhaustion, cynicism, ineffectiveness in the workplace, inability to concentrate. It's chronic negative responses to stressful workplace conditions, right? So when we've designed or are modeling designs that do not make people feel supported, this can lead to burnout. Um, it's not considered a mental illness, but it can be considered and is considered a mental health issue. Okay. So this is something that you would bring to the attention of a licensed mental health provider if you felt yourself in these situations, if you feeling exhaustion, cynicism, not being effective, not being able to focus, negative response to everything that comes up in the workplace, just a general malaise and discomfort, and even lack of inspiration, right? These are all things that sort of indicate burnout. Physical exhaustion is also one, right? So emotional, but also physical exhaustion. Imagine someone collapsing on the job, or someone, falling asleep at their computer. People who have panic attacks or anxiety attacks, right? These all indicate signs of burnout as well, right? Company culture can contribute to burnout as well. And so the best way to support your staff and support yourselves is to cultivate spaces that reflect your values around wellness and self-care. Okay. So this is really critical as we think about the future when we come back outside. How many of you, okay, I live in New York City. So I think about what we were doing before March of 2020. We were commuting, some of us hours commuting, right? We were either in our cars or in subways, packed subways, right? Packed on the freeways and highways, commuting hours, sometimes a day. We were spending time probably away from our families, at the workplace, many hours. Whether we are in places where we could work at home flexibly. Some of us had the opportunity to do that. Many of us as entrepreneurs have flexible workspace and flexible work hours, but look at culturally what was happening. It was really dysfunctional how we were before. And we start to realize with the pandemic that there are ways to be in community and communicate and work effectively remotely, where we could have time, that we could sleep a good night, that we could rest and be home more, or be outside more, or be in community more, do things that we love. um, these are things that probably we're never going to want to go back from, right? We're not going to want to go back to 3 hours of a commute, or being in the workplace 12 to 14 hours a day, right? Like, we're not going to go back to that. People are going to start to push back on this idea of dysfunction, right, in the workplace. And so we need to think about, like, what are the ways that we can design for a future that really centers a company culture that is about sustainability, that is about retention of your talent, right? That is also about meeting people's needs. Okay, so I want you to think about a couple of these reflections I have for you. And if you want to write notes now, you can. Otherwise, you can look at the slides later. How do you describe your business and those who work at your company, right? Thinking about your company culture. How often do you convene with your team, and how do you conduct those gatherings? In our company at Mama Glow, we have internal meetings 3 days a week, and we start those meetings with a check-in, highs and lows. We get a sense of what's happening for every single person on the team, personally first, and then we go into professional meetings and updates. But we start with that as a way to anchor everyone and make sure we know what's happening. So if someone is, experiencing undue hardship, we know, right? It's not something that we're finding out after the fact, after someone has indicated through behavior, or indicated through their work, that something's going on, right? So it's all about really creating a space where there is open communication and comfort, right, with the team. Another thing that we also do is we set up a theme, right? And the themes are usually monthly, and they correlate with our internal calendar that we have. And those themes, we have certain words that are really adjectives that we want to sort of live by. And we want people to lean into these adjectives, these themes, as part of how they'll conduct themselves for the month, right? And how it'll weave into their work. And so we're always coming back to those themes as principles, right? As almost like a North Star. So think about ways that you can bridge community, that you can also encourage people, especially through the times that we've been living through, to find safety and solace, but also to find peace, when they're coming into the workplace, right? um, what safe spaces have you created for staff and for yourself for retreat, right? So what does retreat look like, physically, but what does it look like in terms of this way that we're living now, which is really remote, right? Like, how are you creating safe spaces for those who work with you, but also how do you do it for yourselves, those of you who are solopreneurs, right? Like, what is your step away moment? What's that moment where you get your self-care, right? Where do you go in that time frame? And if you have staff, what does it look like for your staff who need to step away? What have you designed for retreat? And is that a place that is celebrated and supported, or is it punitive if you actually go take retreat, right? So how are you valuing this time and energy that folks are devoting to work? And also, how are you rewarding them um, um, on a regular basis to make sure that we keep the morale high? Yeah. What supports do you offer for full-time and part-time contractors, right? Sorry, for full-time, part-time, and contractors, right? So for full-time employees, right, we have a certain set of benefits, and for part-time, we try to do something very similar. but we also incorporate our contractors, right? Because they're really critical, even though they're not people who we work with on a day to day. We also schedule time to meet with them, outings, things like that, to again keep a really nice, cohesive, happy working group. And sort of what are some of the things you can do? We found a place that's near us that offers like rock climbing. And so we're going to start going there with our larger team. But we're starting to see like that people find ways to like express what they desire and what they're interested in, and what would feel good. And it might be interesting to say like, hey, let's go check out this person's, idea for fun. Let's go have a picnic, or let's go do this, or find ways to, again, like, especially when things open back up, to minimize the distance that we've had to suffer through, right? And bring ourselves back together, because one of the biggest things about company culture is community. We have evolved for community. We expect to be supported and anchored in community, and we're really, even those of us who are introverts, right? We are supported, and we feel and always draw ourselves to community. We're always trying to find where the tribe is or where the village is, because we evolved for that. So we thrive when we're with others in some capacity. So find ways to minimize distance and create spaces of closeness, connection, and also comfort, especially through the time that we're living through. um, what language best describes your company ethos? And I want you to really think about this, right? Like, a lot of us think about like our brand name, our tags, our colors, our, brand guidelines, and how to look really fly out in the world as we express ourselves through the brand equity, right? But but what about the ethos? Like, what does it mean to work at your company? Even if it's just you working there, what does it mean to work with this group of individuals that have come together? What makes you all your own culture? Like, what is the culture of working at this place, even if it's two of you or one of you, right? What is the culture here, right? And so we need to define that, what our ethos is, because that will also attract the people who should be working alongside you, folks who you should be in connection and relationship with, right? So it's all about, creating, um, and designing spaces that we would like to be in, by the way, and not spaces we want to hurry up and leave. Right? Like, at the end of the workday, you don't want to like slam your computer close and like try to escape. It's about designing spaces that feel fortified, that you look forward to coming to, right? You want to look forward to stepping into your work, and you want folks who work with you to look forward to it as well. What values do you uphold, and what do you reward? And so I spoke about this a little bit earlier, right? Like, when we think about what we reward and what we celebrate, do we celebrate, people pulling all-nighters and working themselves to the bone? Do we celebrate people, sick and working through COVID? Do we celebrate people, who don't take breaks, or who, people who come back to work like 10 days after having a baby? Like, what do we celebrate, right? What do we reward? Do we actually reward people by investing in their mental health, by providing supports there, a group counseling, group counseling sessions that are available virtually? Do we support and reward people by investing in their mental health, for example, right? So I want you guys to, think about those things, and journal on those reflections, okay, later outside of this session, okay? Here's some mindful and reflective prompts I want you to also be thinking about personally. Um, how can you be more present to your needs, right? What does slowing down look like for you? What self-care practices allow you to feel more connected to your body? Not outside of your body, but right inside here. What makes you feel grounded and connected? And then how can you create space for community care and mental health support? And so, as Molly said when we began, this is, Mental Health Awareness Month. May, we're in this month where we're really exploring what it means to be mentally fit. Mental fitness and mental hygiene is critical, right? And if you do not feel well, in your mind, just like if you don't feel well in your body, if you don't feel emotionally well, you're not going to be effective as a leader. You're not going to be effective as a founder. You're not going to be effective as a solopreneur, right? So it's not about just the output and how much you can get done at the expense of your well-being. It is about investing in your well-being, and as a result, by the way, you have increased productivity, right? So it's about investing in yourselves first. Yeah. All right. So I want you to think about bringing mindfulness into the workflow, and I'm just going to go over this really quickly because we want to go into questions, and I have a couple. I just have a few more things to go through with you before we take questions. And so, bringing mindfulness into the workflow. So, being mindful in your meetings, right? And I want you to start this today. If you don't have regular meetings on the schedule that are not just about like people's to-do lists, you need to get those going, right? You need to know what's happening and what's buzzing in the beehive, what's happening in your community. So making your meetings more mindful. Do you start with a check-in? I talked about how the check-ins that we start with. Provide an opening quote or a theme for the day, the week, the month, the quarter, right? So think about that. How can we do this? Okay. How can we make our meetings more mindful? How can we check in? And so think about the quotes that you love, like, oh my God, I saw this amazing quote on Instagram. Open with that. And then ask everyone to share how it relates to them and what's going on in their lives. Yeah. Take a breath together, just like we did. We took 5 minutes together. Take a breath. You don't have to be a meditation guide. You can just say, let's just take a couple breaths together. Inhale, exhale, right? Start meetings with mindfulness and take a couple of collective breaths together, right? And then celebrate team wins and tiny victories, okay? It does not have to be that we're only, talking about things through the lens of what else has to be done. We can celebrate the tiny victories along the way. We can celebrate moments that are minuscule, because those are also important, and people thrive on praise, right? And so even when we have to bring in a correction or put correction to something that's occurred, we can start with praise, correction, and then praise, right? And so that's how we can be mindful in how we also communicate. But make sure you're celebrating tiny victories. What are some of the tiny victories that have occurred for you? I want you to drop in the chat. What are some of the tiny victories that have occurred in your business, in your workplace, or for yourself? Drop in the chat. What are some tiny victories that you really haven't celebrated, that you really haven't shared, that you really haven't given a moment to lift up? Those are important too. That helps keep people focused and driven and their morale up. Okay. So celebrate tiny victories, and then acknowledge that things are challenging. Okay. And not acknowledge when things are challenging, just like they are right now. Living through a freaking pandemic, y'all. Living through a pandemic, it is challenging. We have to acknowledge that. And so we can't just isolate like people's productivity in this moment and separate what is happening around us. We are all connected. We are all affected. So we're affected by what's going on around us. So I see a lot of things that are happening. Some people said they issued their patent for both design and IP. Hey, staying on top of my orders, even through personal challenges with a toddler. That's huge, right? So praise yourselves, okay? Successfully pivoted when in person, when workshops were restricted. Yes, to tiny victories. I released a new single and I'm about to release another, and collaborating with writers and musicians. Yes, okay? So give yourself that praise and give each other that praise, lift each other up, because that keeps us motivated, all right? The next thing is prioritizing play. All right. And I don't want to hear that you don't have time to play. I don't want to hear it in any way, shape, or form, because you do. Okay. Prioritize play, you all. Um, Play is so super important. It's like an essential part for your team, for happiness. The word recreation actually comes from Latin recreare, which means to create again or to renew, right? And so we are renewed when we play, right? Remember we used to have recess? Anybody? Recess? Going outside? Somebody said they have a Peloton. Exciting. Yes, right? Playing outside. I see a lot of amazing, amazing tiny victories that are coming up. Beautiful. Yes to recess, okay? So say yes and go outside. Do the things that make you feel good, that make you feel at ease. So allow ourselves time to play for recreation. It offers mental consolation, spiritual consolation, allows us to also live into the aha moments and create something new, right? Play is where like our mind can expand and not be focused on productivity. Okay. It is critically important to prioritize play. Most of the businesses that have knowledge workers, by the way, allocate 20% of their time to play. So think about the Googles of the world, right? These are companies that understand that to get what you need out of knowledge workers, they need to play, they need rest, right? So that is important. Okay. Play also helps us transcend the thinking brain and allows us to stumble upon new strengths and become aware of areas where we need to grow. Okay. And it offers a safety net that allows us to dive into process without the pressure of performance, right? Which is associated with productivity or outcomes. So that's really important, y'all. So expand into the present moment. Find ways to play. I want you to drop into the chat how you play. Someone says that they take 20 minutes a day in their garden. Yes, I'm big on that. Getting outside, beautiful. Exactly. Gmail was created through play. Absolutely. To the 20% allocation of playtime and many other Google products, by the way. Yeah, walking with the dogs, walking on the beach for a sunset, watching my daughter play helps my mind play. Beautiful. Okay. And so, in a culture that's obsessed with productivity, this is really important for us to slow down, make time to transcend the monotony of our day to day lives, right? And get inspiration and get outside. And so, I want you to think about like how you're prioritizing play in the workplace, and you can drop that into the chat. And also, what are some ways you can foster playful exploration within your team? Within your team, right? What does it look like to foster that in your team, y'all? And what does your own individual play practice consist of? Okay, so think about those and reflect on that because play is critical. If you want people to stay, you have to make space for play. Okay, so I always think about like really fun ways to engage my team to give them time where they can like relax and be at ease, and this also means when people are on vacation, let them be on vacation. When you go on vacation, be on vacation, rest, okay, play, all right. Really important, okay. And the final thing that I'm going to share, and then I'm going to invite Molly to come back in because we have a lot of questions from you all. I can tell, and I'm so grateful for all these amazing things coming up in the comments. These are great shares. Please read the comments, y'all, so you can see what your fellow attendees are sharing around how they play and how they're prioritizing play. Okay, so self-care, right? This is the final thing I'm going to share, and then you guys will have access to my resources. Um, self-care and community care. And so self-care is really like checking in on a moment-to-moment basis to assess your needs. It's really actively listening to your body and spirit and responding in a mindful way. So self-care is not just trying to bubble bath your problems away. I know that that's what we learned from Instagram, but that's not really what self-care is. Self-care is in this moment, oh, I feel thirsty. Let me drink a water. I feel, like my mind is a little scrambled. Let me just go take a walk and just like clear it. My body needs to move. Let me go out for a run. Okay. It is checking in and responding to what you actually need. That is self care. That is nurturing, right? Oh, the plant needs some water. You pour water, right? That is nurturing. Self care is also about what you don't do, right? So it's about saying no. It's about creating boundaries, right? It's about, making space for your wildest desires and dreams and centering yourself, right? And so that's critical. So think about it not just about like through a capitalist lens about externalized self-care, which is about like performance, but think about like an internal experience of really checking in and responding to your needs. If you're hungry, to eat now. If you're thirsty, if your mind is fried from being on your computer all day and looking at freaking slides and presentations and all these things, that you take the time to step away and you honor what your needs are in the moment. That is self-care. Okay. So I want you to pop up in the chat around what it is that you do. I see beautiful things around what you all are doing for self-care. Community care is checking in with your folks in your community, the folks that you work with. And if you're, again, a solopreneur, it is checking in with you who is at the apex, because when you grow, by the way, and you have other people who enter into that fold, you want to have established already all of these practices. Okay. So community care is checking in with the folks to assess what supports and interventions are necessary for the community to thrive. What is best for all involved? Okay. So I want you to also think about what is best for all involved. If you have a larger business, think about what is best for everybody, right? And start designing to meet the needs of community care. All right. And this is, these are my just 6 ways that I think that you can really work towards avoiding burnout and really drive successful and sustainable businesses and communities as you grow. Thank you all so much. Molly's back, so we're going to get into your questions. Keep firing up in the chat. We love everything you guys have been sharing.
Thank you so much, Latham. I mean, I was over here like taking notes, and there's so much that we can take into our lives from today. I wanted to step back and start really high level, because this was a question that a lot of people who are joining us today asked beforehand. Being an entrepreneur is often equated with the hustle. So that feels in many ways in conflict with this idea of caring for yourself. So how can everyone on today's call uncouple that idea of hustling and putting a lot into your business and putting you first?
That, first of all, thank you for that question, Molly. And what a challenging thing we have to do, right? If we lean into that model and that belief system. I am of the anti-hustle belief. I don't believe in hustling because I don't believe that the thing that I'm building is also running away from me. Like, it's here. So I don't have to chase. I don't have to like hurry myself. I don't have to rush. I have to work at a pace that is sustainable so that I can sustain and nurture the thing that I'm growing, right? And so I also, when I talked about language, we talked about that early on, right? What's the language you use when you describe your work? And I don't say I'm killing it. I'm hustling, because hustling to me is, I think about like the street. I think about drug dealing. I think about like the life of hustlers is not the life that I'm actually in pursuit of. And it's not a life that I lift up. Right. And so I think when we think about the co-opting of language, we have to think about what it also means to do those things. So hustle is associated also with a type of living that is constantly, you are constantly under stress. You are constantly looking over your shoulder. Like, you are constantly, in a state of, you're never in a state of relaxation. Right. And so I don't want to be there in my business.
Mhm.
Right. So, and I think
Yeah.
about like, the kinds of ways we describe these things, and it doesn't sound supportive. I think about the thing I'm doing, I'm nurturing, right? So I'm growing something that takes time. And so I can orient myself around time and know that like it will take, a pace or a beat for this to happen. But if I focus my energy there, fruit will be born. And so if you concentrate on focusing your energy and not like spinning your wheels everywhere because you see the things happening around you, it's like, well, that's happening for them, or they're doing what they're doing and it's happening fast. It's not happening fast. What you're seeing is externalized. Everything is taking time. If you look at what's at the surface, underneath, under the soil, there's entire root systems that are keeping something in place, and you only see a little bit of it above ground. So understand what it takes to build, and anchor yourself in the energy of what is slow and what is sustainable, that is going to
Mhm.
stick around. Because look at a lot of the businesses, by the way, that were getting all kinds of shine for growing and how fast they grew, and we're seeing movies about them now. Okay.
Yep.
So don't believe the hype. Don't believe that like just because somebody was able to do something in a record amount of time, that that's the way to go, and that's the way. And by the way, look to see what's happening inside that place. The people are not
Mhm.
happy, right?
Yeah.
So you want to grow something that you feel congruent with. And so if
Mhm.
it doesn't, for me, it feels incongruent to like try to be like moving at a crazy pace and to be trying to live into this hustle mentality that's aligned with this kind of girl boss mentality that's also really just, I think, an outgrowth of what we see, a lot of the solo entrepreneurs that are like men that have like really pushed this kind of way of being that doesn't feel aligned. And so don't try to force yourself to be that way.
Mhm.
And understand that like a lot of you are having kids, you have families, you have a
Yeah.
lot of responsibilities. And so imagine if you didn't have all of that. Oh yeah, you could do a lot of things, like some other people can. But if that's not your setup, don't try to like force yourself to fit into a compartment that is not sized for you. Really allow yourself to feel into and live into what you have created, and the
Mhm.
path that you have set out on, and really model for the future that is going to allow you to breathe easy. Because
Mhm.
if you're up to your head in stress, if you're up to your neck, if you're stressed out, if you can't sleep at night, the thing that you're building, by the way, you're not going to feel good about. Like at every juncture, you're not going to celebrate anything. You're going to be trying to find your way out. And
Yep.
so I want you all to build things that you feel proud of, that you don't even want to sell because you're so happy there, right? But we
Yep.
do want to build to a place, right, that's sustainable. So I think we have to like reject and really not even reject so much as divest, actively divest in that mentality, because it's
Yeah.
not sustainable, it's not healthy. And that's why this community is so amazing, because it's about culture, it's about community, it's about support. You are not finding a lot of places that are supporting entrepreneurs the way that the Tory Burch Foundation is, and in
Mhm.
the way that is about like, your personal growth and holding your hand. That is important. So go into places like this where you find community, where you're connected to people, but do not allow yourself to get caught up in or feel like, oh, something's wrong with me, that I don't feel aligned with this, but I do want those things that I see, that
Mhm.
they're showing or celebrating. You can want those things and have those things, but I think you have to find your own way.
Yes. What you're saying resonates so much. We just had a conversation yesterday with Tori and some entrepreneurs, and she was saying our company could be 3 times the size. We could be for it. We could grow. We could grow. We could grow. But at what cost? And is that the right thing for us? And it's
Mhm.
always that checking in, recentering. Is this who we are? Mhm.
That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
Molly, you couldn't have said it better, right? That checking in. That's
Yeah.
right.
And this actually brings me to a question that I saw Susanna drop in the chat and really hit home for me is sometimes slowing down almost feeds an anxiety
Mhm.
because we all have different responses to things. What is your advice for those people out there who are like Susanna and I, who just want to power through?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's real, right? Like this resistance to that moment, because what happens, I think, when we're so busy and we're so used to being busy, is very easy to like keep our plates full, and not, because we don't have to really attend to ourselves. And so the invitation to like actually check in and see how I'm doing in relation to everything that's happening around me can be alarming, can be uncomfortable. It could be something that we've like never really tried to do or had to do. Oftentimes, people who do work that is like entrepreneurial in nature, this is why you do it. So you can, it's like you distract yourself from, right? Like from
Yeah.
having to actually like focus on yourself because you're so busy like creating something that's going to like save the world or help others.
Mhm.
And what I have to say to that is the, the amount of, I'm not talking about like having to take like a full day of like, I do stuff like that, but like you don't have to do that. You can just say like, I'm about to go into a meeting. I'm gonna just take like 30 seconds, couple deep breaths, and head in. It's really just about the mindfulness, right? And
Mhm.
about the centeredness that you approach everything with. Um, you do want to examine like the resistance to slow, right? And what we have, I guess, internalized as more like I wouldn't say the addiction, but it is like a an urge to
Mhm.
be at an accelerated pace, right? An accelerated pace feels really normal to us. And so when we do turn off some of the things that keep us at that pace, you start to notice that, yeah, you might feel anxious when you come off of Instagram, or you like log off for a couple of days, right? You're like, oh my God, what's happening in the world?
Yeah.
You might feel anxious, right? These things, you might feel
Mhm.
that. But once you get over the hump of actually like being just in your world, right? Or with others, or whatever it is you do, like if you love biking or gardening, or, going to your fitness class, or whatever it is that you like to do, when you take the time to do those other things and you kind of unplug from the things that keep you tethered and keep you moving at a pace, you start to feel like you can breathe a little bit. At
Mhm.
first, it doesn't feel that way because number one, you feel like I could be using this time to be productive, right?
Yep.
Which
Mhm.
again is like the antithesis of where I want you to be, because I know that you can be doing this, you can be doing something to be productive, but this is productive. Like this, what we're asking you to do here is also productive. And it is actually it is the, it is the investment that you make
Mhm.
to pour into productivity. So what that looks like for you is going to be different, right? Like everybody's going to be different, and not everybody, like for instance, I'm someone who I love to do vocal meditation. Like I did a guided meditation with you, but I do meditation with like sound and I play instruments and I sing throughout, and that works for me, and that's way better for me than to sit in silence. And I know that works for
Mhm.
me, so that I do my thing. I know that like I'm not going to run in the summer heat, but I might take a boxing class or I might do jump rope, or like find what works for you that lets you like step away and do
Mhm.
that. It does not have to be just like, being barefoot in your backyard or like sitting in, um, in, and sitting and, waiting for like, the sun to go down and like waiting to start a seance or something. I'm not asking you to do that. I am asking you though to like do self inquiry to figure out like what does make you feel like you can release this pace and you can
Mhm.
slow down and recalibrate yourself. Like, what is that for you? Right. All of us, we feel like we are recharged when we come back to do whatever it is we're doing after we've done something, right? That like makes us feel like it's like, so whatever your self-care is, right? So, and it's not just doing stuff, it's also what you don't do. So are there some things you can take off your plate because you're doing a lot already that would
Yep.
make you feel less paced, right? Like you could feel like, oh my God, this is so much relaxing. I can watch a show now, or I can go out and just like watch the birds, or I can, go get an ice cream or whatever, right? So I want you to think about it in that way, like what I can take off my plate, what I could
Mhm.
delegate, how I can deputize people who work with me so that I can have a little bit more time to discover even what would feel good for me.
Mhm. That I think that leads me to two last questions that have come in. One is when I'm in a place where maybe I'm not ready to do this or haven't done this, but I know that it's urgent and I need to because, your health is suffering.
Yeah.
How, what can someone do to just raise their hand and talk to their colleague or their pod or their friend? Like, what is that first step?
Yeah. So I think like if you notice for yourself, like even just being here, like, hey, like a couple things came up that I want to integrate, but a couple things came up that made me think like I'm getting to that place. I'm getting to that edge. I feel a little burnt out or whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? Um, that first of all, just like the acknowledgement is huge, number one. Then it's finding the supports. And this is why if you're building the business and you're at this nascent stage, or even if you're at a place where your thing is thriving, you can still implement things that support people, right? So think about like what it would cost, what it would look like to bring in a licensed mental health provider.
Mhm.
What's good about right now is people are doing stuff just like this. We're on a Zoom right now. You'll have groups that'll be on Zoom with a therapist. They'll do sliding scale. There are apps. There are services where you can buy in for your company, and so then they can have private one-on-one as well as group support. So that's huge if you can do something like that. Or you can just like create like some sort of benefits thing with like one of the apps that's out there, and pay and then have your employees use something like that, so they can,
Yeah.
they don't even want to talk to you about it. It's there, right? But I think that those are some things that I would put in place right now, because we're seeing an increase, right, in terms of mental health concerns, and how it's showing up in the workplace. People aren't able to separate their work from their home life because you're at home working, right? So it's really
Yeah.
hard. Yeah. So I would do that, but I would say like if you're feeling that inside, who are the supports around you, including colleagues? Are there safe people within the workplace that you can talk to that might have resources? I provided a bunch of resources in the guide that you guys will get, like in terms of really great places to start to look for therapy, apps, as well as some of my favorite tools and things that I find very helpful to use. So I would go through there too and read through some of those as well. But
Mhm.
also, normalizing the conversation is so critical, right? And like having a space
Yeah.
like this where we could talk about this is so important. And to understand that like we're talking about like an actual diagnosis now, right? Like burnout, not like, oh, I feel burnt out. Like it's not a feeling. Now it's like it's an actual diagnosis, like where people are suffering. And so
Mhm.
really to identify and not to downplay what you feel symptomatically. Like if you're feeling things, like acknowledge this is a real feeling. And part of the self-care is being able to name and say like, yeah, I actually need help now, right? And so
Yeah.
being able to do that is huge. The resources exist. It's now a matter of finding the right resource and finding the right provider even, right? Because it's not like a one size fits all. Everybody has unique needs. And so really do the exploration. And what
Mhm.
I always say, it's like for anything, right? Like it's like with doctors, it's like with dentists. It's best to create a relationship with a provider or a service before the emergency, right? So I don't
Correct.
want to be finding a dentist when my tooth is chipped, right? I don't want to be finding a doctor like days before I'm trying to have a baby, right? I want to, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to have a provider already set up. So you want to look for a mental health provider when you're well, right? And not when you're at the edge in a crisis, right? Because then you're trying to find like whoever can help you and you may not find the right fit. So look now, right? Invest now in
Mhm.
finding some supports, whether that's group, if you want to just put your toes in, maybe you start with group and then figure it out from there. But absolutely, I would say find like a buddy, somebody who can hold your hand and do it together if you feel trepidation. It's not, again, we're not meant to do all these things alone. We evolved for a community. We need support. So consider bringing somebody in to hold your hand as you do that as well.
Mhm. That's incredible advice. And there is one last question that came in that I think is important. And if we can touch on it quickly, and then I will pass it back to you to close us off with an exercise. And we will send out any slides, surveys, and housekeeping to everyone after,
Yeah.
so that we don't change our flow, because this has been such a good conversation and good feelings. So the one question that came in is for somebody who has a large company or is a rising more junior employee. How do you raise your hand that there is an issue happening at the company without retaliation, right? Like something is not calibrated here, but we need to do something. So how do you protect yourself but also use your voice?
Such a fantastic question. How do you protect yourself but use your voice? Um, the voice is a very powerful and important conduit for change. Your voice is not to be diminished or to be underestimated. Using your voice in situations, especially where you feel uncomfortable, is the reason to use your voice, right? Now, um, again, I think when we are looking at culture, one of the things I talked about in the beginning, right, was like sort of what is the company culture? What's the ethos? All these things, like when we're thinking about what we describe, and I want you to be honest with yourself, when you think about what you described, are you the things that you aspire to be? Or is there work to be done? Because if I'm in a place where it doesn't feel safe, where it doesn't feel community led or peer, supported, or, people feel under threat or uncomfortable, they're not going to feel safety to like have conversations openly, right? So think about what that means in the context of your business as you think about this question, okay? Like, have you cultivated a space where people could share or bring something to your attention? Um, so I think when things are uncomfortable, one of the ways that it can be addressed is to create a separate space that's not like your regular meetings or whatever, but to call in versus call out, right? To call a person in to have a meeting around with whoever it is that's involved in the situation, who has the same feelings, right? There can be a meeting whereby concerns are shared. If it's an individual thing, if you can talk individual to individual, I would still have a support, right? Because I think it's always necessary to have someone who has the shared values and has a shared experience. I could also say, like, I also feel this, but it's important to think about how you communicate. Communication is really important. So the way that we communicate, okay, any conflict is always first, we describe the nature of what occurred. We describe its tangible effect on our life. And yes, and then we describe how it made us feel. So you describe the event that occurred. You describe its tangible effect on your life, how it actually affected you, and then how it made you feel. Okay? Because when we do that, we are not saying, well, you did this, you do that. It's like, this situation occurred, right? So you can just explain what occurred or what's occurring or what you're noticing. This is how I'm impacted by this thing. And this is how it's making me feel. So when I talk about the impact, I'm talking about performance. I'm talking about relationship with colleagues. I'm talking about whatever it is that is seeping into other areas of workplace or my life. And then I finally talk about feeling last, because again, we want to ground it in the fact that this is something that is visceral. Like you're connected to this because it's affecting you personally. So, but don't start with you did this and right? It's always explain what occurred, its tangible effect on your life, and how it made you feel. Because when you do it like this, by the way, people listen. So start there with that. The other way I would do it, if you can't say it out loud, I would write, right? And not emails, right? Because emails, anything can be interpreted and anything can be sent out. I would write out and practice saying what it is I want to say. If you're not somebody who can go and speak off, right? So write it, practice it, talk it through, speak to people who are already mentors, right? So consult a mentor. Hey, this is happening. What are your suggestions? Especially someone who knows the nuance of where you're at and, any implications, okay? Who can provide some feedback as well, right? Practice what you're going to say, get feedback on it, refine it. And then if you are not comfortable to have that in-person meeting, like face-to-face, then I would do that meeting, like invite on a Zoom or invite on a phone call. Because then guess what? I can kind of read what I need to say. And then I can say it with more confidence, right? And that's how I would do that. I would not hold it in, and I would not just suffer through it, because guess what's going to happen? It will fester. It will come out in other ways. It will affect other people. Everyone's connected, right? Yeah. So make sure to lean into the skill that you already have, and then practice what you need to cultivate, right? Like if I can't say it off the top of my head, then I'm going to learn how to write it. If I can say it off the top of my head, then I'm going to use my voice in that way. But either way, you're speaking, your truth. And it's really important to do that, especially because it'll help others as well. And it'll repair the culture. Again, it always has to be about, this is community care. When I speak my truth about what's happening in the community, it serves to also support others, right? So it goes back to, again, the culture that we want to cultivate and that we want to make sure that we upkeep within our businesses.
Yeah. Well, I've seen so many people write such nice things in the chat. One saying, my blood pressure has even dropped during this session. Just sense of calm. So why don't I hand it back to you to kind of send us on our way today? Yeah. And I'll turn off my video and all you.
Thank you so much, Molly.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Thank you to the Tory Burch community and to all of you who have joined us today. It's been such a pleasure and honor. I hope that you all were able to just, lean into some of the supports and the advice that was shared, and also hopefully some of the skills. I hope that you'll be able to get into the slides and do some of the exercises, because I really want you to think about what you're building, what you already have built, and and what you're going to continue to cultivate. Because I want you all to succeed, not just financially, but I want you to feel really good about the businesses that you've created and the spaces that you've created for other folks who come to work for you and folks that you're in relationship with, right? And so let's think about the design of our lives, the design of our businesses, and the way that you nurture your business. I want you to nurture yourself too, right? Because I know a lot of you pour a lot into your business, right? But make sure that you're pouring into yourselves, right? So that you don't get to a place of burnout, that we prevent ourselves from getting to the edge, right? And that we actually start to invest in ourselves, invest in our mental wealth, okay, and pour into ourselves in the biggest ways. All right. So we'll just take a couple moments again to breathe. And again, this is something you can do at any point in the day, morning, noon, or night, before a meeting, after a meeting, opening a meeting, closing a meeting. But think about how you can just sit with yourself for a moment. Okay. And so let's just close our eyes again. And if you want, you can sit upright if you'd like to lie down, or if you have your back propped up against something, that's also really good. Inhale, bring the shoulders up by the ears, and exhale them onto your back. So you can just kind of relax your shoulders a bit and settle in. Yeah. And let's just take a couple breaths here together. And I hope that in these past hour that we spent, that you've been able to soften a little bit, relax, trust yourselves. I want to invite that you continue the rest of this day with self care at the core and of everything that you do. I want you to reflect on how you can improve or further design your businesses in ways that support your long term goals, not just financial, but the goals that you have for your thriving community, your team, your staff. And I want you to just remember that you don't have to rush. You can pace yourselves, you can take time for yourselves, and really you must, because you want to model for everyone that looks up to you. You want to model for them what is possible when they take time for themselves, that they can still have a thriving business and meet their own needs. Receiving a breath and exhale. So go ahead and place your right hand over your heart, and I want you to make a promise, a dedication to yourselves. Just something that you will carry forth out of this space and until we meet again. How will you make time for yourself? How will you center your needs? How will you give yourself more grace? And how will you embrace the energy of ease? Receiving a breath and exhale. Sighing it out, y'all, nice and loud. Receiving a breath and nice big sigh. Exhale. I want to hear it through your screens. Inhaling again. And exhale. Holding that reflection or that intention or dedication, and just being mindful as you emerge from this space into the rest of your work days and your lives, wherever you are in the world. We're so thankful that you were able to join us here, receiving a deep breath and exhale. Receiving a breath and exhale. And again, receive a breath and exhale. And so as we come back into the space, just reaching your arms up, stretching nice and long, move your body, do what you need, stand up, forward fold, whatever you need to do. And coming back into the space. And as we close out, if you just want to drop into the chat anything that came up for you, we'll be heading out. And we thank you all so much for just being with us for an extended period, so that we could offer mindfulness in the session in addition to the presentation. Thank you so much for what you all have shared. Hope that you've been able to grab the resources, but also confirmation came up for Sharm. Also hope that you're able to connect with each other. What's so beautiful about what the folks here are doing, and what Molly is cultivating here with the Tory Burch team for you all, is making sure that there's a thriving community, that you guys are having a way to find similarity and find connection, right? And so this is an example of community that is rooted in the principles that we discussed, right? And so I hope that here you find solace, that you find other people who you can connect with and build with. And I also hope that you found something here that was useful to you. And we are so appreciative for you all coming. And thank you so much again.